Hello and welcome to another week of WP. Well, the 2020 US election is nearing the end, with Democrat leader Joe Biden looking set to take the presidency despite legal challenges from incumbent President Donald Trump. This week, our political expert Dr. Ian Cook wraps up the race to the White House.
Hi. Well, I guess you thought the US election was over given that we had it last week. But as you might also be aware, it's not quite over. And part of the reason for this is that the US president is effectively elected maybe 10 to 11 weeks before she or he actually takes up his office. So at the moment we've got a situation that Donald Trump is still the president and he will remain president until January the 20th. On January the 20th, Joe Biden will be sworn in. Why do I say will be sworn in? Well, because none of the challenges thus far really are amounting to anything. It's unclear that any of the inquiries will uncover enough votes to change the result of this election. So it's very, very unlikely that anything that Donald Trump will do will actually allow him to be declared winner of this election. So we're caught in this time where Donald Trump is still president. We sometimes talk about him as a lame duck president, but he still has all the powers that a president has, and he can still do things, and he may well continue to do things up until January 20th. Now, Joe Biden is in a pre-administration mode, so he's trying to get his team together to get organised to take up office officially on the 20th of January. So what you're going to see in US politics is a long sort of protracted process where Donald Trump will conduct inquiries. We know William Barr, his Attorney General, has started an inquiry. That will last probably weeks. So we'll all go through a process where Donald Trump won't admit defeat, he won't concede. Joe Biden, who everyone effectively knows will be president, isn't quite president, so we'll talk about him as president-elect. So we're going to have a confusing situation for the next little while. The other thing to keep your eyes on is Georgia. Now, Georgia has to have two runoffs for senators in that state. And that's really important because the Democrats won the presidency, they won the House of Representatives, but they didn't win the Senate. If they win those two seats in Georgia, they will get control of the Senate. And that will change everything for Joe Biden. Why there are runoffs in Georgia? Well, Georgia has rules that says a senator has to win more than 50% of the vote to be elected. They had to have a runoff election or a re-election because there was a candidate or a representative, a senator who left office and he was replaced. So that person had to be authorised. And they also had a normal replacement senator. So there are two senators. Every state has two senators. So the two Georgia senators are up for election. And if the Democrats can win both of those, they will win control of the Senate. And as I say, control the presidency, House of Representatives and Senate. And this is, as I say, this is the stuff to keep your eyes on in US election politics and US politics generally for the next few weeks, because that's going to be a crucial moment. And that's in early January, as I understand it. So it's going to be confusing. Nothing's going to be settled. Trump won't concede. So we'll have a president who's acting like a president and a president-elect who's sort of acting like a president, and things will be confusing. And the Georgia Senate runoffs will add another level of confusion. So stay tuned. US politics is going to stay interesting for at least another 10 weeks.
And you can read about how the US election and the Biden administration will affect young people in WA in Dr. Cook's commentary on our website. And now, AMA WA President Dr. Andrew Miller has this update on COVID-19.
Hi, thanks for your time. Interesting days in coronavirus in Western Australia with the controlled border now opening up and almost immediately having to be adjusted for South Australia. Now they will fall into the category of needing to go into 14 days quarantine. That'll create a lot of confusion because people won't be sure when that applies from. But given that South Australia now has community cases within the last 28 days, a cluster probably, from the sound of it, arising from one of their quarantine hotels, that will mean that anyone who's been in South Australia in the last period of time will need to go into either home or hotel quarantine on arrival in Western Australia, just the same as Victorian and New South Wales people will have to. And the risk clearly from returning international travellers going up all the time, with now 15 million active cases of coronavirus around the world, probably about 10 times that in terms of the asymptomatic and unknown cases as well around the world. Around about, you would expect 100,000 or more people in critically ill somewhere in the world at the moment, and unfortunately we've seen around 1.3 million deaths worldwide. So what does this mean for us here? It means that we need to be on a very cautious footing as far as recently arrived travellers are concerned, and as far as particularly our hotel quarantine, because obviously the odds of someone who's come back from one of these countries is much higher now that they have COVID than it has been previously. So we'll watch that situation and monitor it. Will Western Australia be ready if we see an outbreak like the one we have in South Australia? Time will tell whether our contact tracing is good enough. We're only just starting to look at the QR code system of checking into businesses and following that over the next few weeks. The COVID Safe app, I think, is generally regarded as a failure by most. It's picked up very little in the way of cases, and unfortunately what it means is the community's lost confidence in the idea and probably aren't bothering to have the app switched on when they go out. And that is the danger with government technological solutions to things, is that if they fail then people lose confidence. The hospitals have not got fit tested PPE yet, and we will continue along with the nurses to keep asking for this, pushing for it. They've been doing it since March in South Australia. They're implementing it in some places in Victoria now, a bit late, but West Australia's not starting this until 2021, which is too late. Although we cannot be optimistic about the vaccines, it's premature to see that as a way out of COVID. We need to be preparing to be having small outbreaks and coping with them in the community for at least another 12 months. Everyone will remember the concept of flattening the curve, that the lockdown was designed to slow the rate at which this virus goes through the community. And what we've learnt in Australia is that if we want to avoid lockdown, we have to keep the numbers extremely low. We can't cope with mid-level numbers of 30 or 40 cases a day without this thing getting away from us, unfortunately. Part of the reason for that is that it wasn't accepted early on that this can travel in an airborne manner, so it travels quite easily. The 1.5 metre distancing, the hand hygiene is not enough, particularly in crowded indoor situations. We are going to need 3-layer face masks. Reusable ones are fine, and we are going to need to be improving the ventilation in facilities where there's a lot of people around indoors. The Germans are working very hard on that, re-kitting all of their office buildings and so on, and their hospitals, of course, very importantly. We haven't even started to look at any of that work here in Australia yet. We're kind of assuming we're going to skate through this without needing to do it, and I don't think that that's true. So there's a lot of work yet to be done. I think there's a reason to be optimistic that if we stay on our guard, we'll be okay. I think that cancelling the Skyworks for Australia Day in 2021 is a wise thing to do at this point. And I think the acknowledgement that alcohol is an important factor in how people behave. It's a medicine that's used to reduce social distance. So in this circumstance, we know that we need to stop the virus from hopping from one person to the next, which it can do very easily. We saw also an outbreak in Canada, which came from a gym where they were all following social distancing guidelines in terms of the separation between one another, washing their hands and so on, but it spread very quickly within the gym where people were obviously expelling large quantities of air. So we need to adjust the way we're doing things a bit. No need to panic, no need to fear it, but we do need to respect this disease, and we need to stay humble as a nation. And in Western Australia, as we're joining in with New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, we see how quickly it all changes. We've got to get up to their level. We've got to be thinking, where am I going to get a mask from? Do I really need to be in this crowded indoor situation? And what can I do to keep myself, my family, my workplace, my patients as safe as possible? And in terms of aged care, if you've got a relative in aged care, you need to be really asking the tough questions right now. What's the plan? Where's my relative going to go? How am I going to communicate with them if we see an outbreak here? Thanks very much for your time.
And that's all for this week. We'll be back with another episode of WP next time, but until then, it's back to you, Ivan and Sarah.
Thank you, Nelson. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website and social media pages.
No matter where you're watching, we wish you good health and good night.
Take care.